directly behind me, this peach colored house. Used to be a blue colored house, and that's where I actually was. I was born in Providence, Rhode Island, but when I came home from the hospital, this is where I lived. My parents bought this house back in like, shoot, I guess I was born in '75, so a couple of years before I was born. And it's actually pretty close to the beach, the Barrington Beach down in Lavins Marina. And let's see, I forget what year it was, probably when I was about 11 years old, my parents had financial difficulties. And this is all I knew till I was 11 years old, was this house, this street. I had 3 friends that lived across the street in this house right behind us over here. Jonathan and his 2 sisters. We had Jerry and Mary, who lived directly behind me in this white house, or this yellow colored house. Here's an interesting kind of tidbit with them. Mary was probably in her late 80s, and Jerry was her nephew, and he lived with her and he helped take care of her. And she had this like 68 Mustang that was like, it had like the original tank of gas and it had original tires and everything. You know, back in the 80s, you know, that was something that was really cool. You know, like you're like, wow, you get this vintage car and stuff. And one day we're sitting in the backyard and her other nephew comes to visit. And if you guys, some of you older guys will know, welcome back Cotter. And her nephew was actually Epstein, the guy with the afro that used to do the funny walk and stuff. So we're back there looking, I'm like, holy shit, that's Epstein from Welcome Back Cotter. And his name, Bobby Hedges, that's his name. If you look him up, you Google, I'm sure he's all over the place. But, you know, he came to visit her and he did the strut, he took pictures with us and stuff, and it was really cool. But when I turned 11, the house was going to be foreclosed on. We had to sell the house. My parents had to file bankruptcy. And we moved to Warren, which I had to move schools and stuff. But I was going to a school with my cousins at that point. I mean, I was going to school in Barrington, but when I got to Warren, I would be going to school with my cousins. And when we got there, I remember my mom saying that we weren't going to be able to take our dog, Heidi, our German Shepherd. And I love this dog. And I put up a stink. I put up a huge fight for it. And I fought and fought and fought. And eventually they were like, fine, there's not really enough room, but, you know, we'll keep Heidi. And Heidi moved with us. But everything changed in my life from that point. I understood that at an early age, at 11 years old, that just because you're in a house and your parents are working and, you know, you're supposedly normal, doesn't mean that that's what's going to happen to you forever. Doesn't mean that you're safe. Doesn't mean it's going to be there tomorrow. Doesn't mean it's going to be there next week. And, you know, financial difficulties at 11 years old learning this is something that's kind of, you know, not normal. You know, if you look over here real quick, tell the quick story about my dad. This fence line right here in that brown house, there's a guy named Ed that lived in the house, and he was an asshole. I'm assuming if he's still alive, he's still an asshole. And he had a daughter named Betsy, who my cousin Christopher crushed on pretty hard. She was kind of hot. And the guy that lived in this house, my friend's father, Tony, had got his hand stuck in a machine at work, and he was basically disabled. His hand was messed up. His hand that he writes with, his strong hand. And the kids had hit a ball over into Ed's yard, Tony's kids, and he was being a dick about giving the ball back. And Tony asked him for the ball, and he punched Tony in the face right over the fence and knocked him down. Now, Tony can't defend himself because he's handicapped. Knocked his glasses off. The kids come running over to our house directly across the street. At this point, we had a porch on the front, and, you know, they knock on the door, open the door, and they're crying. My dad, he got punched in the face. And I'm standing there, and immediately, my dad goes rushing across the street. He's staying here. He takes the kids and puts them in the house, and we're watching. He goes running across the street, and he starts barking at Ed. Ed walks towards the fence line, and my dad crushes him. I mean, right over the fence, just knocks him like 10 feet back on the ground, and picks up Tony and brings him to the house and helps him out. I just remember that, you know, I mean, we were probably 8 years old or something like that. We were young. And I remember sitting there going, you know, my dad, and I know now, you know, the guy couldn't fight for himself, and my dad was sticking up and fighting for someone who couldn't defend themselves. So, you know, at an early age, you know, these are things that you don't really think about at the time, but you look back and you're like, I was learning to defend people that couldn't defend themselves from like 11 years old. And some people nowadays be like, you can't just go around punching people. Well, back in the day, you could. You know, and that taught you to stand up for yourself and stand up for other people and not, you know, be backed down or beat up for any reason. I'm proud of my dad for that, and I'm proud to have had that experience. And being back here reliving it, everything looks so small. When I was a kid running across the street, it took like 25 minutes. Now I'm looking at it, I think it's like 15 steps and I could be from one door to the other. I mean, it's insane. Good memories, you know, the only bad memory I have of this place is when we had to leave. You know, I had to leave this place where I had my friends here. I had another friend, Chris, that lived down the street in that white house. On the end was JD. I mean, we had like a little neighborhood full of kids, and you can see it's really quiet back here. We'd ride our bikes up and down the streets, build ramps, and jump them all over the place. And the only bad memory is when we left. Okay, this is Lavins Marina, and now it's been renamed to Lathams. Maybe it always was Lathams, and I pronounced it wrong. That's a possibility. If you look behind us right here, this is like probably, I don't know, a 5-minute walk from the house I grew up in. You know, like a 3-minute bike ride. And right now it's low tide. You can see all these rocks and stuff out here, but we'd come down here and we would fish. There used to be a pier, like a little boardwalk pier thing down over here that they have it's kind of partitioned off now. You can see the seagulls hanging out and stuff. Like, this is what I think of when I think of home, is the smell. You can smell the salt there. You can smell the low tide. It's a little funky smelling. The seagulls, the water. This is the East Bay out here, which is, you can see the lighthouses and stuff out there. Very New England feel to it. And like when the tide would go down, we'd actually climb down these rocks and go down there, and we'd find horseshoe crabs, which were like these really funky looking things with a long tail, and we'd break off the tail on the horseshoe crab and like sword fight with them and stab each other and shit with them. And I remember one time I actually found a bracelet, a solid gold fucking badass rope bracelet. Somebody must have been on one of the boats and it fell off or whatever, and it washed up on shore. We'd pick up all kinds of random shit like on shore and stuff all the time that people would drop off boats. And I found this gold bracelet. It was fucking badass. So I took it home and I cleaned it up and stuff, and I was wearing it around. I'm like, yeah, it was really nice. And I went to the batting cages with on like a date with, I can't remember, I think it was Becky Chin I went with. And we were hitting the ball in the batting cages, and then when I got in the car, I realized when we got home that the fucking bracelet was gone. And I called the place up. I was like, hey, I think I've lost the bracelet. They never found it or whatever. Yeah, right. But the point is, you know, easy come, easy go. It wasn't mine to begin with, but this is part of the big part that I miss about living here. Sometimes, you know, I mean, you're not going to get to a beach where we're at unless you get like a 2-hour drive, 3-hour drive to get to that beach. Here, this is like literally 5 minutes away from my house. And if you wanted to come down here and lay on the rocks or lay in the park, or back then there was a little more of a beach down here. There was some sand and stuff. You could be there in like, you know, 5 minutes. But it's definitely cool coming back here to see this, that it's pretty much unchanged except for the pier. I mean, that's the only thing that's different. So we were probably about 8 years old, and everybody in the neighborhood were skateboarders. We were skaters, like the Tony Hawk and those guys. And we stumbled upon this. We thought we found the fucking holy grail of skateboarding when we found this. We were like, holy shit, look at these ramps. We thought it was like a skate park. Literally, it's a sewer system, and it's like the town sewer system. But, you know, you had like these little, it's kind of fucked up now, but you could grind on these things with your board and stuff. They had this straight thing that now is kind of not straight. You had these things you could fly down off of and then bounce off that. And, you know, like these people across the street and stuff, like they never said anything to us. So we were like, come back here day after day and try to like do like drop-offs off this thing, like onto the thing, and then it's just, there's so much that you could do with this, right? So we decided that it was ours. Like, we found it. And if you follow me over here, there's another piece inside here. And like, we hang out here. This is where we come, like a little seat for us to sit on and stuff. We hang out here, hang out back here. Like, it was their own private little hangout. Like, if we were done skating, we'd just chill here. And like, it's kind of, you know, you really can't see anything. Like in the summer when all these trees and stuff are growing in, you really can't see anything. So we decided at 8 years old, and why they sold us the spray paint is beyond me. But back then it was like no big deal. Like, you know, nowadays you can't sell an 8-year-old spray paint. It's not gonna work. We came back and we spray painted the fuck out of this thing. We drew like the Rat Bones and Bones Brigade and like all these skate logos and shit all over this thing. And we sprayed this shit till it looked like fucking, it was in the middle of Brooklyn. Like, it was completely covered. And then I went home and my mom was like, where you been? I said, like, oh, we were just fucking spray painting our joint. And she was like, what? She's like, what are you talking about? I told her, I was like, there's this place we found. It's got all these like jumps and ramps and stuff. She's like, what are you talking about? So I showed her and she was like, this is the town sewer. You guys fucking did all it. Like, you spray painted this whole thing? I was like, yeah, pretty cool, huh? Needless to say, we were never allowed back because obviously they would have known that we did it. And I was hoping that we'd come back here now, and it's probably, I mean, it's fucking like 20, it's like 30 years later, but, you know, there's no paint left at all that we put. I really spray painted everything. It was great. Standing outside in Somerset, Massachusetts, where I think in 1990, maybe 91 or 92, probably 91, because I was already reading the magazines in 92. Me and my cousin Christopher and Henry and a couple of my buddies, Mike and Clint, 2 twins, joined Gold's Gym in Somerset, Massachusetts, which is where I met Al Thurston and Eddie Piana. So if Al and Eddie see this, you know, and even Donnie too, I met Donnie Susan, my training partner at that time. This is what happened to the building now. They actually have turned it into Teamworks. We work hard and play hard. I don't really know if that's a gym or if it's, they do like birthday parties for kids and activities and all kinds of stuff like that, but they used to be red and yellow with like a tan color as the base of it. And it's a huge, I don't know if you guys can see down here, it's a huge facility. I mean, the thing is gigantic. Get down, there's a door where you actually get in. And right across from the door right there was like a little story time. Me and my cousin Christopher were here working out one day. And as he was backing out, he hit this car, like he tagged the front of it. So he's like, fuck that, let's get out of here. So he takes off. We get back home, and he tells his mom, my aunt, and he says, hey, we hit a car up there, blah, blah, blah. My aunt was like, oh, you fucking knuckleheads. There's cameras out there. Which, as you can see, there are cameras out there. They're still there, right? So she's like, get your asses back up there and go tell them what you did and take responsibility for it. So we get back in the car, and I'm like, I remember it's clear as day, crystal clear as day. I was like, Chris, we should take the highway, which there really is no fucking highway to get here, but we should take the highway because we can do like 80 miles an hour on the highway. And he goes, shut up, we can do 80 miles here too, don't tell your parents. And he fucking hit down this back road, that's a straight road, going 80 miles an hour to take the side road to get back here. And then we pulled up and parked, not even dawning on us that, you know, as we walk by, we walk into the thing, into the gym, tell the lady Colleen, who is actually the receptionist at the time, we hit this car on the way out, we want to make sure that everything's okay and talk to the person. So she says, which car? And we go and look, and the fucking car was gone. We didn't even know that when we walked by it on the way in. We were so worried about getting back in it before we get caught that the car has gone. Nobody gave a shit. Like, they probably didn't even notice that they hit the car. So then we were like, fuck, like, now what are we doing? Colleen was like, if someone comes and says anything or asks anything, I'll let you guys know what the deal is. But I mean, if nobody says anything, well, nothing happens at that point. So that was just like one of the times. Like me and Henry, this is where we brought Kari Kaiser to train. I've told that story in story time where I hit myself in the head with a dumbbell. And I met Donnie Souza here. I did my first competition out of here. We had the Gold's Gym bodybuilding competition team for the ANBC, which was all natural competition when I first started competing. And I spent fucking, I mean, I can't tell you how many hours a day I would come in here and train. And then sometimes, like before I got into bodybuilding, seriously, me and Henry would come here, we'd work out, we'd play basketball. He'd play basketball and I'd miss a bunch of shots. Then we'd play like racquetball, because you could hand your ID in at the front desk and play racquetball. They give you the racket. So then tennis, which neither one of us could play tennis, but they had that machine that shoots the balls. So we started shooting the machine at each other and trying to hit each other with the machine. And Al saw us doing it, and he's like, hey, what do you got? He calls us back up there. He's like, you guys can't play tennis anymore. So they took our tennis privileges away. And literally like 5-6 hours a day we'd spend here after school, training and playing and doing whatever. They had a pool, we were swimming, and it's just great. This is like, I'm so happy that the place is actually still here. So when we drove by, it's overgrown from the main road that when you're driving on it. I was like, fuck, that sucks that place is gone, because it actually does mean a lot to me. It really does. And actually being here right now is actually one of the best parts of the whole trip, to be totally honest with you. That, you know, people go, it's a fucking building, Jerry, you idiot. But it just holds so many good memories inside of, you know, Rhode Island and Mass that have so many bad memories for me that it's like, it's cool to be back. All right, we're here on Christmas Eve at my grandfather's house. And we actually used to live downstairs from my grandfather. When we moved from Barrington and my parents filed bankruptcy, my grandfather's got a 2-apartment tenement house, and he lived on the top floor with my grandmother. We lived on the second floor, or the first floor. And before we lived there, my aunt had lived there with her family with my cousin Christopher, which you guys all know who he is. And when I got punished, well, not punished, but I got suspended from school, was home the whole day. The whole story of me, when I started training, this is the basement that I started training in. My very first workout I ever had with Christopher was down here in this basement. And I was like, you know what, while we're here on Christmas Eve, I'm going to come down here because, I mean, let's face facts. I mean, Gramps not going to be here forever, and this stuff may change after a while. So I came down. I'm like, damn, you know what? Some of it, I mean, some of the stuff has been moved out, but this is actually the mirror that we hung up right here, so we could actually watch ourselves, like do curls and stuff in this mirror, and lateral raises, everything in this mirror. Like, we literally hung that up. We hung the chin-up bar over here. We drilled holes into the actual foundation beams, put the 2x4s in, drilled a hole in this thing, and put up a chin-up bar so we could do chins. And that's actually like literally screwed into the house itself. Like, it's not going anywhere. And actually, if you look over here, on this side, let me see if I can get over here. There's actually some of the weights are still here. These are like those concrete inside the plastic weights that we used to have. And here's one of the bars that we had over here with the weights set up on it. And I'll be honest with you, this setup with the weights actually on there, we probably set that up then, because we were the last ones, me and Christopher, down here to use this stuff. So it's a good possibility that that has actually been on here for the last 24 years since when we used it. And wow, I mean, I remember, you know, being literally right here in this spot. We had a bench right here. and I was like just to the side of the mirror. This thing wasn't here. This is fairly new. And I was laying on the bench, and I was bench pressing, and I actually had too much weight on there. And as I get to a certain point, I started to get stuck, and I didn't know enough to roll it down, so I was just stuck. And I'm laying here looking up at these floorboards going, Mom! Mom! And she was upstairs, in the apartment upstairs. Couldn't hear me, so I'm laying there for like 10, 15 minutes. And if you pan over here, you'll see that there's a washer and dryer. She came down to do laundry in the washer and dryer, and I was laying on the bench going, Mom! Mom! Help me! Get this thing. So she came over, she's like, trying to pull it off me. And then as she was pulling it, it was rolling, and I realized, oh shit, I can roll it. And I just rolled it down and dumped it off and got up and went upstairs. That was, it's pretty cool to come back here and see this stuff. And I think all the the benches and stuff are completely gone. They must have got rid of that stuff. Like they cleaned this place out since then. But we had like on these walls here, we had the Weeder principal posters that we got out of the Weeder set. The Weeder weight set actually came with these instructional posters that taught you how to lift weights. And those were on the walls there. And we had two benches. We had a flat, and then a bench that would be a flat that you could actually incline and put this like screw behind. And when it sat back on there, we actually broke the screw. So we had like a piece of rope that we tied through it and tied that. So it was sitting on a rope. So it was like all ghettoed up. We still had the incline. And then in the corner over here, near the boiler, which we technically weren't supposed to be over there. My mom was like, stay away from the freezer and the boiler. Actually, right over there, I don't know if you can actually see. Can you see that over there? Mm-hmm. You can't see it? There's actually one of the benches right there. It's over in the corner. It's pretty dark over here, but can you see that?
Nope.
No, okay, anyways.
There's a light bulb above your head.
That's one of the... I don't see anything to turn it on. Is there a switch? There's got to be a switch somewhere to turn it on. Anyway, so right over there, around where that bench is now, we put two railroad ties that we got standing up, and then you put the bar on top of it with the weight, and you would walk under it and pick it up. And the railroad ties would fall down, and you would do your squats. Then the other person would put the railroad ties back up, and you would lean it on it, and then get out from underneath the thing, and it was balanced. So we'd have like 200 pounds balanced on these two railroad ties down here, and try to make sure that we didn't drop on each other or anything. But very cool memories, and to see this stuff still up here is, wow, it's so cool.